Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Design Your Life, the podcast where we talk about living intentionally and, really living your purpose in life. We're your hosts, Jim Antler and
Krista Downey.
Krista. Welcome to the show. Finally, great to have you on finally. So we're going to do a great discussion today. We're really going to talk about, well, actually, before we even get into that, please make sure you like and share the page. It's hard to believe we're finally on our 7th episode. We got 6 in already. Yeah, we've had some great guests. We've had Andrew Holmes. We had Norman Hector. We had Alex Tabler. So we've had some phenomenal guests. And one thing that kind of keeps coming up, what I've noticed, is really one of the biggest challenges of living authentically is, Andrew said it best, kind of living a poser life. Really wearing a mask. And, that came up quite a few times as well, because, we go through life and we kind of hide who we are because we really want to please other people so much, right? We want to try to fit within our family dynamics. We want to try to fit within the groups, our friend groups, our communities. And a lot of times in doing that, we kind of bury who it is that we are and what it is we love to do ourselves, right? What's your thoughts on that, Krista?
Well, I mean, yeah, we all wear different masks throughout our days, like there's a mask for our work, there's a mask for being with family, and there's masks for being with friends and out in community. But the thing that I have started to sort of really work on is that, it's like, in order for us to live an authentic life, we have to recognize when we're doing that. Like sometimes it's necessary, I think. It's necessary to, put on a mask, but to recognize that that is for a purpose, and not to change who you are or to act differently within those different areas of your life that
And what's some of the signs that we may be people pleasing too much? Because you did mention that there's times when you really have to, right? Whether it be I don't know, maybe you're working somewhere and you have to put on somewhat of a fake face to maybe just make a customer happy or your boss happy or stuff like that. But then again, there's the flip side to that maybe you're just doing it a little too much, we've lost who we are authentically. So what's some of the signs that we're really people pleasing too much, or we're kind of losing ourselves? How can we tell?
Well, I mean, I notice in my life is when I'm overcommitting, or if I'm it's like I'm not feeling good in my own body. Like if I, wear a mask for, to please a boss or to please somebody in my family or something like that. It's like you feel it in your body, I find.
Right.
So that's wrong, or that's not wrong. That's kind of not a good word to use, but it's like it's not right for you. Not authentically being true to myself. And I noticed that when I'm pleasing someone just for the sake of wanting them to agree with me or like me or whatever, like that, it's like I might say yes too much. But I always notice it in my body.
So, we were talking, you and I were sharing stories earlier, before this episode, and you were just kind of sharing, about how you felt, on the day you were getting married, for example, right?
When I was proposed to, yes.
Proposed to.
Yes.
Right. So, what was your body telling you at that time?
Well, that's a perfect example of in my life, particularly when I felt like that it was like there was something not right about it. I mean, my ex-husband and I had been together, living together for a long time. And it's like the next step we thought was to get married. And we had been talking about it before he actually did the actual proposal.
Mhm.
And so, but that evening when we were together and he proposed and presented the ring and everything, it was even a ring that I had placed pictures on like our fridge and everything. It's like, yeah, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And this is the next step in our relationship. But the actual day that he actually did it and proposed to me, it was like, I had this like gut feeling of like, I don't think this is right. This is doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like how I'm supposed to feel. Like I'm supposed to feel really excited and like, it's like,
Right.
yes, like absolutely. Like there's nothing like, there's nothing in my mind or my soul or heart or anything that's like, stopping me from making this next step. And there was a hesitation and I was like, what is this? Like, and
Right.
I didn't trust it. And,
Yeah.
it ended up like, it's like 5 or 6 years later, my marriage ended. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's important to trust your body. And,
yeah,
I think a lot of people struggle
yeah,
with that. I mean, our body really does know. I mean,
yeah,
we're just a ball of energy internally, and it just
yes,
has a way of understanding what's important for us. We don't listen to it enough.
yeah,
I know we really have to have the ability to kind of look within and
yeah,
really sit with that, right? And,
yeah,
I'd said it before in past podcasts is we don't take the time to, when our body's telling us something like that, or when we have these gut feelings, we're just so quick to override them, or to just dismiss them,
yes,
and I don't know why we don't like being alone, or at least taking that as a sign to say, okay, I need to go away. I
yeah,
need to sit with this for whether it be 24 hours, right? And it kind of brings up the discussion of boundaries, right?
yeah.
Because we don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings. Like, how weird does it sound to say to somebody, well, actually, listen, you know what, I
I have to
love
think about
you.
this
We're
a little
we're
bit
we're
more.
going on this journey,
Yeah,
but yeah, let me step away and let's just really
yeah,
think about this, and go and be on your own, right?
yeah,
But it's so weird saying that because it's
yeah,
such a boundary, and people don't know how to even take that, right? Let
yeah,
alone ourselves even having to be able to do it. But how great would that be to be able to have that power over ourselves, or ownership of ourselves, to be able to step away and give ourselves time to really
yeah,
contemplate what it is we're doing
yeah.
in life, right?
Yeah, I know, and I think a lot of the piece of that is that it's more self-awareness.
Hmm.
So, you know, a lot of the times we're just going through life and we're just, it's like one thing after another and there's busyness and lots of little layers of, sort of emotional things that are going on and just like people in our lives and like things that responsibilities, like there's lots of things
Hmm.
that make it so that there's lots of noise. And so, um, what we're trying to do with Design Your Life is more of a, it's like a way to really get to know yourself and like signs that, that help you with making decisions. Like,
Right.
it's like lots of times, we have to make decisions and it's like, okay, it's okay to like, take a little bit more time to go to the next step in your life or whatever the case may be. It could be as simple as, buying a car or as difficult and challenging as, like a new relationship or
Yeah.
something like that. Like, it's like there's a lot of things that you have um, to think about, how it is going to affect you and to
And
realize
let's
your
talk about that, because you mentioned take time to think about how it's going to affect you, but let's talk about our feeling of responsibility for how we affect others.
yes,
So I think that's one of the biggest
that's a good, yeah,
challenges of stepping away, is because we think we're responsible, or we have this belief that we're responsible for how we make others feel.
yeah,
And that's a hard one to overcome, because you know, I mean, I've definitely over the last year have really given a lot of thought of this, and we're not responsible at all for how other people feel. We can. affect how somebody
Yes.
feels.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we don't have that impact on people, but if we're doing something for ourselves,
Yeah.
right, or if we need time for ourselves, or we have to set certain boundaries, should we feel responsible for how another person reacts to that? Is it our responsibility? It's not. Is it my responsibility to step away from you? If you've put me not purposely in a position where I have to contemplate something, is it my responsibility to worry about how you feel about that? Right?
Yeah, no, and it's a really good question because boundary setting is like the hardest thing that you could do.
Hmm.
Um, like I've found it so difficult because I've gone through life being a people pleaser. I admit that, and then you know then going to a place where you have to set boundaries where it's potentially going to hurt feelings is it's really really hard.
Hmm.
So but you have to know that it's like the people um that you're setting boundaries or like that you're making these hard decisions to say like no, not right now or whatever. It's like the people that understand, like, are not going to be upset about it. The people that might have some kind of like, um, negativity towards that are the people that, you know, haven't really done that for themselves anyway.
Right.
Like, so yeah, no, I think that we are not responsible for other people and how they feel. Um, but like you have to be compassionate and you have to realize that not everybody's in the same space. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yes, as long as you know it's not at a sacrifice to who you are, who you're trying to become, right? Because,
yeah,
another sign that you may be a people pleaser, you may be wearing a mask, is really, putting others first at your own expense,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, if that's something that you feel you're doing, that's definitely a sign that, yeah, that you're people pleasing, and you may be a poser, you may be wearing a mask.
mhm,
It's important to I believe it's really important to really put yourself first. I'm of the belief that you really can't even take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself
yeah,
anyhow. But how many times have we really put other people before our own needs?
yeah,
Whether it be a job. I mean, I know myself, and again, I don't want to come off the wrong way here, but I always felt like I had to financially provide, obviously, for my family and stuff like that. And listen, they've been supportive of everything that I've done. I've switched careers multiple times to really find that right job. But it was always for chasing finances. It was always for chasing that better life financially, so that my family could survive. We could pay the bills. We could have things that we just didn't have
yeah,
growing up. Right? I grew up in a poor family, stuff like that. But never once did I step back and kind of take the time to really reflect on, well, what do I really enjoy doing and why am I not doing these other things, right? Because
yeah,
for fear of either not making it financially, this won't make me
hmm,
money, stuff
yeah,
like that. I mean, and again, it's my family, but it's important to take care of them. But I kind of question, what if I was able to put myself first a lot earlier in life, would we have all been better off anyways? Because you're
yeah,
doing something you love to do, and you're just, I believe now the universe has a way of taking care of you as long as you're, living to your true potential, who you authentically are, and stuff like that, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. No, and it's interesting because I think that there's also different perspectives of you being a man and identifying as a man and
hmm.
me being a woman, and so we do have different like sort of perspectives of like putting others first, and it's also a personality thing too, I think.
Hmm.
So like I find on like just from like research and reading about things and reading about other people's stories, I find that women do put themselves last
Mhm.
in all kind of situations. And so that's even a different perspective, like,
Yeah.
and why is that? I think it's society and like a lot of external things that cause us to do that. But um, it's, something that's like worth having another podcast about because it's like
Well,
a totally
it's funny you
it's
say
a
that.
very heady subject.
So
So
we are going to have another podcast on that subject because, women, you know, for sure, I mean, they're, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is coming from a male perspective, but through discussion with many other women is
yeah,
you really grow up trying to find yourselves, and then you're leaning into, oh, I have to be a wife. And I'm reading a lot of
like
or
rules.
listening to a lot of Michael Singer, and and he's saying how even women will identify themselves as, I'm this person's
Yeah,
wife, right?
yeah,
Well, you're not, you're your own person. But yes, to your point, roles, and then you have to play the role of a mother,
yeah,
right? And then you play the role of, well, where am I at career wise? So you
yeah,
move into a career role, and then when that center of the kids are moved out, well, now you're in this whole different role of, who am I, right?
yeah,
Um, so that, yeah, we definitely want to lean into that more. We are going to have a separate podcast. There's a couple guests that we're going to bring on to have that discussion, because it's,
yeah.
you're right. You're always, yeah, definitely
There's definitely,
changing.
yeah, there's like so many layers to everybody's
Right,
life.
right.
And like different, like, responsibilities that like individuals have. So like, we can't blanket like some of these discussions to
Hmm.
say that, it's like you always have that kind of like perspective and I always have this perspective because there's just many layers to every person. And that's like, kind of the self-awareness piece too, where,
Right.
but yeah, no, like as for like it's such a great discussion piece because there's so many of us that do that, like that
No.
we put other people before ourselves. And, it's like in order for you to live the life that you're supposed to live and your best life, like, it's like you have to kind of take time for yourself to figure out, like, it's like, why was I making those decisions? Like, why did, like, I do this or do that? There should never be like, lots of regrets in your life, but because you learn from them, there's, and that's the way that you can look at it. But yeah, there's a lot of people that put them, put other people ahead of their own
Right.
decision making.
So yeah, and so we'll do one more way to know, or a way that your body's telling you that you may be people pleasing, is really validation seeking,
Yeah,
right?
that's big.
And that's it's a huge one, because I mean, really, if you question why do you need validation to begin with, and that's a touchy one, because then, dare I question whether or not we love ourselves enough, or we accept ourselves enough for who we are, right? So that's probably for me one of the biggest ones. I've
Hmm.
constantly throughout life been seeking validation, whether it be the best that I can be at my job, or before I step into something that I feel passionate about or stuff. I was always known for seeking approval from
Yeah,
somebody else, sharing those ideas, and really letting other people's opinions dictate whether or not I move forward with, an idea,
you're right.
right?
Yeah,
Um, and it really stalls our
yeah,
growth when we do that. But I can speak from experience that I'm definitely confident that my need to do that was definitely a lack of acceptance for who I
yeah,
was, which I've only really been gaining over the last, we'll say, 6 months to a year now. Really leaning in and being comfortable with who I am as a person, what I believe
yeah,
in, what I'm passionate about, and I really just taking that time to myself, right? And
yeah.
what a difference.
Yes.
I can say now, like doing these podcasts, something I love to do, for no, I don't do them for financial gain. I don't do them for monetary reasons. I literally do them because I enjoy having these
Yeah,
discussions, and
and
it
sharing our
feels
stories.
great,
Yeah,
right? But I still get into that trap where I'm seeking validation.
yep,
and it's hard to get out of. So what's your thoughts on that? Yeah.
It's a huge one for me too. All my life I felt like I was trying to get approvals
Mm,
from, like family and like, even like when I started working like in the business community and
mm.
like my own job and career and everything. Validation is like super like was super important to me. I mean, I've always felt like I had a sense of self, like growing up, because that's one of the reasons why I didn't have like a huge amount of friends or, like I didn't have big circles of friends and stuff like that
Right.
because I always felt like which I'm very proud of, like that I didn't, need it for me to make decisions or anything like that. Like, so, and maybe that was because I was the oldest of my family, like of like my sisters, or that I lost my dad, like, you know, early in my life. But I've always found that I've had a good sense of self, but then self-esteem comes into play too. Like that's what I found. Like when I was seeking validation was more like that I needed reassurance or that, I didn't have a good self-esteem. And so you really have to work at that.
Yeah, no, and you're right. We don't need that validation. And the reality is, people are just not going to think the way we think. I mean, we all
Yes.
perceive life life is so, and I'm really coming to believe this is, because again, people say we're all unique.
Yeah.
I, um, I disagree a little bit. I believe we're uniquely the same in terms of we all feel or we all require the same things in
Yeah.
terms of wanting to be happy, wanting to fit in, and stuff like that.
Connection.
What's unique is our experience throughout life
Yes.
is unique
Yes.
because how we think internally is unique. Like you and I sitting here, me sitting here looking at the screen right now is unique to me and how I'm looking at it, how I'm
Yep.
perceiving, how I'm telling the story. Even though we're talking about the same stuff,
Yep.
your perception of this is unique to
Yep.
yourself, right? Yeah, to seek validation from somebody else is just that you can't get it because there's billions and billions of people on this earth. There's no way people are going to think the same way. It's
Yeah.
just not. It's just not going to happen. It's
Yeah.
just so outrageously unrealistic
Yeah.
to think that way. But yet, we
Yeah.
need that. So the question is, do we need it to be validated to do what makes us happy, or do we just struggle finding the happiness in our own lives?
Yeah.
Do we struggle finding the happiness internally? And I guess I believe the challenge is that we don't know how to make ourselves happy. We're always seeking for that happiness externally, instead of
Yes. Yeah.
looking internally for, man, what makes me happy, right? And it's a real challenge
Yeah.
for a lot of
It's
people.
like a constant challenge and
Mhm.
it's lifelong. I mean, I think that, when you get older and if you have you know, like if you're lucky enough to get older, like, you do and that's like an interesting conversation too, is that, you get older and you get wiser, but it's because of experience and getting to know yourself more.
Mm.
And so validation at 20 or 40 or 60 is going to look different.
Yeah.
Because at 60, maybe you might not need as much validation, but there are some things that you still want, you know, opinions about or
Mhm.
seek knowledge about or, wisdom about. Like, and so it's a different kind of validation, I think, at different stages in your life.
So, to close out the episode, what are some things that our viewers and ourselves, as we're still working on ourselves as well,
Yes.
can really do to overcome, you know, the posers that we might be, or wearing the mask that we're wearing, or pleasing others. How do we get to that, authentic maturity, we'll call it, or to our authentic selves sooner? What's some of the things, like, we just discuss, like setting boundaries, for
Yeah.
example, being able to say no to others, you know, um, being okay with not accepting responsibility for how others feel. What's a couple other ones?
Well, it's the sense of belonging to, and like, the fitting in. Brene Brown is a really good person to, sort of read up on. And,
Mm,
she's always saying that a sense of belonging comes from within. It's not something that you can find outside of yourself. And kind of sitting with yourself and like taking time out from yourself is
mm,
really important to do. And not being apologetic about that you're working on yourself. I think that that's like a key thing too.
right,
Um, yeah, no, and just making sure that your health and your wealth, or your health and wellness, is the most important thing, because then you show up differently in your life
right,
when you are feeling better about yourself.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's okay to say no. Again, you're not responsible for how other people feel. You can impact how people feel, but it's not your responsibility if you're doing what's in your best interest. And set boundaries. And I think finally we say, learn to be with yourself. I think that's the toughest thing for people to
Yes.
do,
Yeah.
is really learn to be with themselves and accepting of who you are, because you are absolutely beautiful. You are no different than everybody else on this earth. You have a place here. It's important to understand that, and be able to be with yourself and be with that, and love and accept yourself. So
Yeah.
with that said, listen, we want to thank you for listening. Stay tuned for another episode of Design Your Life. So with that said, design the life you want. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for having me, Jim, and
Yes.
for us to be take a few minutes of your time to check us out.
Awesome. All right. Love is all.
Bye
Design your
bye.
life.